How's it going, my friend?
Good,
Yeah,
good.
yeah.
If your microphone don't work, don't worry, I'm right here. If they can't hear me,
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So, yeah.
Oh, is that what, because you asked? I figured if they wanted me to know, they'd let me know.
Good evening, everybody. Good to see you tonight on this wonderful Wednesday. Day was so nice, I washed my car to guarantee rain for tomorrow. Yes. And good to see everybody. I heard Steve and Tony are at home tonight. I said something about wimps or something a little while ago, but I don't know. Was I talking about them? I don't remember exactly. So anyway, is there anything to report about those two, or are they just?
My parents?
Yeah.
My mom said life got in the way.
Well, there you go.
There you go.
There you go. That does happen for sure.
This will all be recorded for posterity.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so we're in looking at various parables. I've got it all set out to fill the quarter, and now I got all my parables in a row that we'll be doing to finish things out. Sometimes it goes earlier, sometimes it goes later, but who's counting, right? We're just doing our thing here. So anyway, so tonight we're going to get into a parable we find in Matthew 22. We just barely began that last week. And so we'll dive into that one tonight. And we have the 10 virgins tonight and the talents. And if you think we're going to get to those, let's see, what can I sell you? Popsicle and okay, anyway, whatever. Ray's going to lead us in prayer, and then we'll get going here.
God in heaven, thank you so much that we're here tonight, that you bless us with the Bible, that we can read about the parables of Jesus. Help us to understand them, and help us to rethink how we act towards them, and how we can apply them in our life. Be with Daryl tonight as he explains these things to us. Again, God, thank you so much that we're here tonight, and get together to worship you, think about your word. It's in Jesus' name I pray.
Amen.
Amen.
Okay. Okay, so, all right, tonight we're going to be in talking about the marriage feast, and as we had started talking about last week, or what I had mentioned was that the setting here of the parable is that the Jewish leaders should have recognized the Messiah, and because they didn't, Jesus spoke this parable to rebuke them, you might say. They didn't recognize him. And not only that, they persecuted him. Of course, the Jews stood in a privileged position, as we mentioned last week, that to them was given the oracles of God, et cetera, et cetera. God called them as a nation. He guided them through the scripture straight to Jesus. Paul pointed out in Romans that it was not as if they had not heard. It was not as if they did not know. Okay? But Jesus came and invited them to the wedding feast, as we're going to see tonight, and they did not accept the invitation, right? There's many passages in John that speak to this idea. But at the end of John chapter 5, for instance, in verse 39, he says to them, "You search the scriptures because you think that in them you have eternal life. It is these that testify about me." So we've mentioned sometimes that to the Jews' leadership of this day, it's like the law was God. And he says, so you think in the scriptures you have eternal life. Their adherence to the law made them, the people of God. He says, but it is these that testify about me. Okay? And you are unwilling to come to me so that you may have life. So that's what this parable is speaking to. The fact that he was there and he invited them. The scriptures testified about him, the scriptures that they put so much confidence in. How come it didn't work? He says in verse 41, I do not receive glory from men, but I know you that you do not have the love of God within yourselves. I have come in my Father's name, and you do not receive me. If another comes in his own name, you will receive him. How can you believe when you receive glory from one another and do not seek the glory that is from the one and only God? Do not think that I will accuse you before the Father. The one who accuses you is Moses, in whom you have set your hope. For if you believed Moses, now that's quite an indictment, isn't it? See, they put all their stock in that law. See, they think that in the scriptures they have eternal life. That was the big thing for them. And he's saying, you don't even believe it. You don't even believe these scriptures. See, and again, as I mentioned before, these things really you're going to see how they dovetail into the Sermon on the Mount, okay? Because of what they have done with the law, as opposed to what God intended that law to be. If you believed Moses, you would believe me, for he wrote about me, right? But if you do not believe his writings, how will you believe my words? So as we go into this parable, seeing that they renounced the invitation. Why did they renounce the invitation based on what we just read in John 5? Why did they not accept it? They didn't believe. They didn't have any faith. They didn't have the love of God in them. Okay? So what does that mean when Jesus said they did not have the love of God in them? Think about a passage like in one of those Thessalonians letters. I'm always been, first and seconds, I get mixed up. But anyway, said that when he talked about people who did not receive the love of the truth, what does that mean? What is the love of the truth? How does that hit you? The love of the truth. What is that? What kind of love is he talking about? I just really like the truth. It's like a brother to me. Is that desire? Yeah, kinda. Yeah. Yeah, Lisa?
It means you care about like what's right and wrong. Like you're wanting to know what the truth is because you care about righteousness.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Like Jesus said, you can't serve two masters. Either you'll love the one and hate the other, or hold to the one and despise the other. Okay? So this kind of love, this agape kind of love, it means that's whatever it is that you love is at the top. It's your one top supreme priority, right? So that means that whatever you do is going to be in the best interests of, conducive to God and his glory and his cause and everything about him. That's going to be, everything you do is going to be, has to be good for that. They didn't have that, okay? They didn't have the love of God. It's the same thing with the truth. Buy truth and do not sell it. Insist upon it, right? Nothing less than that is going to do. That has to be number one, truth, if you love truth, right? So these are the people that Jesus is addressing in this parable. Matthew 22, Jesus spoke to them again in parable, saying, the kingdom of heaven may be compared to a king who gave a wedding feast for his son. Was Israel ever called God's son? Out of Egypt, I called my son. Double fulfillment, right? Out of the Israelites out of Egypt, and Jesus, had gone with his parents into Egypt and had come back. Out of Egypt, I called my son. He sent out his slaves and called those who had been invited to the wedding feast, and they were unwilling to come. Okay? And again, he sent out other slaves, saying, tell those who have been invited, behold, I have prepared my dinner, my oxen and my fatted livestock are all butchered, and everything is ready. Come to the wedding feast. It's all set. It's all ready. Come on. But they paid no attention and went on their way, one to his own farm, another to his business. So based on Sunday's sermon, what kind of heart did these people have? Pardon? Say? No. Divided, right? So they had a divided heart. Okay, instead of giving God, that's where that love of God, right? They didn't have the love of God in them. They were double-minded. Their hearts were divided. They weren't whole. They weren't completely fixed, so they were not pure of heart. And the rest seized his slaves and mistreated them and killed them. All right? So we remember those laments of Jesus, which one of the prophets did you not persecute, and, et cetera, as he's weeping over Jerusalem, and which may not have been in that particular passage, but, But anyway, you get my point. And but the king was enraged and sent his armies and destroyed those murderers and set their city on fire. Huh. Does that sound like a precursor to anything as Jesus is describing this? Destroyed those murderers and set their city on fire. Okay, something's going to happen literally to them. Then he said to his slaves, the wedding is ready, but those who were invited were not worthy. Now, who is he talking about here? Who are the unworthy ones that are not accepting who is this? Okay, it's the Jews, right? Yeah, it's the Jews that are not accepting the invitation. Therefore, go to the main highways, and as many as you find there, invite to the wedding feast. Those slaves went out into the streets and gathered together all they found. So we just lost the exclusivity of the Jews here when this king is having his servants go out and they're inviting everybody. Okay? So if I'm a proud Jew listening to this, okay, do I know who he's talking about? Those that didn't, because they know. They're not accepting him. Okay? And always remember, you remember what Pilate said about why they handed Jesus over to be killed? Envy, right? So they wanted something he had. They wanted the following of the people. They wanted their, Jesus wasn't looking for status in the way that they were, but, they wanted their status, they wanted the status quo to continue, and the people are going after him, and they were envious. And because of their envy, okay, well, what happened to the scriptures that testified about him? What happened to that? What about that? Okay. What about them believing Moses' words, which would have caused them to believe Jesus' words because Moses spoke about him? Where'd all that go? See? You see what the state of the heart does? Why was it that some people could hear these parables and see Jesus' works and hear Jesus' words? When they sent the officers to get him and he comes back, they come back without him. Did you not bring him? And they say, no man ever spoke the way this man speaks. So he's performing miracles. He's speaking with authority. The scriptures testify of him and all these things. And so many people believed in him. but then some didn't because of the state of their heart. Okay? Quite a real thing, isn't it? Okay? Quite a real thing. So they go and gather all they found, both evil and good. And the wedding hall was filled with dinner guests. Just call them all in, right? And so, but when the king came in to look over the dinner guests, he saw a man there who was not dressed in wedding clothes. And he said to him, "Friend, how did you come in here without wedding clothes?" Right? So we know that, we have wedding clothes, so to speak, right? Does anybody know how the Bible might describe that? Of course, understand, I know what I'm after, right? So, okay. In Revelation 19, he talks about this fine linen, bright and clean, for the fine linen is the righteous acts of the saints. Okay, I'll read the passage here just for the sake of completion here. In Revelation 19, 7 here, "Let us rejoice and be glad and give glory to him, for the marriage of the Lamb has come, and his bride has made herself ready. It was given to her," okay, now who is the bride? Okay, that's the church. "It was given to her to clothe herself in fine linen, bright and clean, for the fine linen is the righteous acts of the saints." Okay? And he said to me, "Right, blessed are those," here's another beatitude, "who are invited to the marriage supper of the Lamb." And he said to me, "These are true words of God." So, when we stand before God, okay, we won't get into all the wedding feast. Is that here or is that in heaven? There's some, but if I'm not dressed now with my wedding clothes, with my fine linen, okay, what's going to happen? Well, in this situation, the king sees him and he says, "Well, how do you come in here without wedding clothes?" And the man was speechless. Okay? So he was, yeah.
So this has always struck me as a little bit weird, because like if you set aside like the moral of the story, the
Uh-huh.
article itself. So the guy sends out wedding invites weeks ahead of time, and people make excuses. And then the day of the party, he sends people out into the streets and says, "Fill up the rest of the seats."
Mm-hmm.
And then when they get inside, he's like, "You're not wearing wedding clothes." I'm like, "Duh, they were out in the streets. They were planning on going for it." Right? Am I that right?
Yeah, you are. Yeah, I think so.
Something about not dressed correctly.
Yeah. I think that might be, it seems like that's like beside the point of the parable.
Well, only if you're trying to make a relation to today about it, but it seems very much the point if you're going to a wedding.
Yeah.
Clothing is fairly important, that's why you're notified ahead of time.
Everybody else had prepared. Everybody else had the clothing. So all those people that were called that day, they were all called that day, right?
Yeah.
So you got this room full of people.
Yeah. That's,
Every one of them knows what they need to be wearing for a wedding. Every single one of them except this one.
yeah, there's that one guy. Yeah.
They gathered all the people they could find, good and bad alike, and brought them to where the wedding feast was ready.
Yeah.
We go to the alleys and grab people. Why would they expect them to be in wedding clothes?
Well, I'm just, I don't know. I mean, I just never went, okay. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Linda and I were talking about this on the way over the pass, but I don't know if you've ever heard this, but was there a custom as far as garments being provided at a wedding?
Yeah, I don't know.
The response of the man is interesting too, in that he was speechless. I mean, if he just came in from, you know, plowing a field or whatnot, he might have had some type of a response, but obviously he's speechless, so he must feel some guilt or understand that he was ill-prepared for the wedding feast.
Well, yeah, he had no answer.
Right.
So it's like if you're caught dead to rights, you know.
But I'm curious if there really was a custom at some point where, you know, they're throwing a wedding feast, did they hand out garments or coverings for the wedding feast?
Not that I know of, you know. And so if we want to, you know, if we want to look at the parable this way for a moment, then he says, he said to him, how did you come in here from out there into here? We're not providing you, you know, you came in here without wedding clothes. So I suppose the thing would be to define wedding clothes. Okay, what is that? Okay, so yeah.
It's funny, I was thinking the same thing Lisa was, but it's probably, okay, because I think he just didn't care. He didn't have respect for it. They went out, like she said, they went out, they got him. They got the good, they got the evil, they just, come on in.
Yeah.
Might have been a message for him if they got in there. But
Yeah.
I feel like this guy really didn't care. He was suspicious, he didn't care.
Mm-hmm.
He was told, hey, you're like a wedding crasher, you know?
Well, yeah.
I'm going to a party.
Yeah, the implication is that he should have known better. Okay?
He was probably a bad guy. He was probably one of the evil ones. They went and got good and evil. So I think he was an evil guy. He did not care. He probably didn't belong there, but he didn't care. They just went out and said, come on.
Okay, all right. Now, Chris?
Yeah, so I mean, this is an interesting parable on a lot of different levels. So the first thing I do is I go back and say the kingdom of heaven can be compared to now. The kingdom of heaven hasn't come yet.
Right.
Because he said, repent, for the kingdom of heaven is at hand. So that's the thing, right? So he's talking about something that has yet to come. But it can be compared to this. This situation can be compared to that.
Don't compare him to those other Jews that just didn't, they were too busy, had something else to do, they didn't want to do it. You didn't compare him to those people?
Well, I think in this particular case, he's comparing that person to Gentile. So first of all, everything makes sense in this parable up until this call out. Right? This parable says, look, the kingdom of heaven is at hand, right? And it can be compared to this because people told you, people told you, people told you. And you know what, by the way, there's something coming pretty soon afterwards that's going to basically wipe out the Jewish structure, right?
Yeah.
This whole thing that you base your faith on.
Yeah.
Which is not really faith.
Yeah.
And so all of that makes sense, right? And then he throws this curveball in here.
Yeah.
And especially for me, because I really do think parables have a purpose. They have a purpose, and you can't treat it as an allegory, right?
Right.
It's really easy to try and go to this person and say, all right, this person would be this type of person, this would be the person, and this is how they would be. I do think there's a common theme here, though, with Matthew chapter 7, when they say, Lord, when did we not, when did we not? Now, this guy didn't have an answer at all.
Right.
But they said, Lord, when did we not, when did we, and he said, I never knew you,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But he didn't say they didn't do things for him. I mean, I think it's in that sort of a vein. But this is definitely as a parable, this is a conundrum because it's an aside, right? It's a how do you weave it together?
Yeah.
That's the question.
Yeah, yeah. And so here's how I've always seen this, okay? So the kingdom of heaven is like, the kingdom, it can be compared to, it's like this, okay? You have a king, his wedding, invites people. They're too busy to come, okay? They got other things to do. So he's angry. These people should be coming, but they're not. So he's angry. He says, okay, just invite everybody. We're just going to invite everybody. So everybody comes in, right? Everybody comes in. But out of those people that come in, there's somebody there that doesn't have wedding clothes on. Now, he didn't go into all he just said there was somebody there was not prepared. Okay? It's implied that he should have been prepared, just like John said. You should have been prepared, you weren't. The kingdom of heaven is like this. We just have to go with that. You know what I'm saying? You just have to, you know, I know, okay.
That's a good way to explain it. I
Yeah.
think that's a good way to explain it. That's the,
Yeah.
that you've got to look at it at a higher level. This is how the kingdom of heaven
Yeah.
operates.
Yeah.
That even anybody who's invited to the feast
Yeah,
has still got the responsibility to put on wedding clothes.
yeah, yeah.
They-
What,
they've
yeah,
still got, and however those were provided, however that was provided, the implication, 100%, I agree with you,
yeah,
what is that it was, they had the ability to have the clothes.
that's it, that's
I
it.
just felt like he didn't accept it.
Right.
Well,
It's
yeah.
like some people, you know, I mean, it's there, it's free, you accept it, he went in, but he isn't gonna accept it. That's why I thought he gets thrown out.
Well, that's exactly what the Jews are doing, right? They're not accepting it. They don't care. They got other things that they're thinking about. Okay? And their only thing they want to do with Jesus is kill him.
Yeah.
They don't have the love of God in them. They can't hear his word. They can't, like he told them in John 5 several times, you know, you cannot hear my word. They don't have the love of God. They can't hear it. They can't understand it. Okay? And so what you're saying is exactly what he said about the Jews, and that's the point of the
And he
parable.
points out that he's gonna get thrown out.
Yeah,
I mean, not just thrown out. In other words, this guy's gonna be in a lot of trouble.
yeah. This is one of those, I think, one of those weeping and gnashing of teeth
Right.
parables. Yeah, Kevin?
I just wanted to carry some of those thoughts and tying back to that imagery and revelation of what, you know, our visualization of the garments that we're to wear. And that's stemming, the visualization in Revelation is drawn from the priest garments in Exodus and Leviticus. And
Uh-huh.
one thing that's always really stood out and fascinated me is that on the Day of Atonement, the one time of the year when the high priest gets to go to the most holy place, the high priest has all this fabulous
Yeah.
clothing that he wears.
Yeah.
And underneath it all is just plain white linen
Mm-hmm.
robe. On the one day when he goes before God in the most holy place, he doesn't wear the bejeweled breastplate and this bright blue robe, and he only wears the plain white
Mm.
linen
Mm-hmm.
undergarments, or not just the undergarments, but the plain white linen
Yeah.
robe.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I think it's important to, when we read this parable and we think, well, this guy, it wasn't fair that he didn't have the wedding garments. I think as far as looking at ourselves and the world around us, God is communicating that he is not asking something ridiculous of us.
Mm-hmm.
He just wants the plain white garments. He doesn't need us to have a fancy bejeweled vest and magnificent clothes. He just wants the clean white
Okay.
linen.
Yeah.
It's not, it's simple.
Sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, and it's not about fairness. I mean, as I said, you know, the implication was that he should have known. He didn't do what he should have known, and that's the whole point. So with parables, you have to first just, what is the point that he's making? If you know, I think that perhaps this might be something to discuss, but I think that it's possible that one of the reasons that the Jews or that some people didn't understand the parables, that they're in their minds, of course, the Jews would analyze things to try to trap him in something, okay? But they didn't have the open heart just to, you know, there's a, you know, there's an intuitive part of us, right? That when Jesus is speaking these things, that if our hearts are open, we know what his point is. Okay? So that's all I'm saying is with the parables, you just, okay, so the kingdom of heaven can prepare, it's like, so you use your imagination, you know what I mean? And you try to feel what is his point. And you can. Now, this just may be my egocentricity here, okay? But when you just take it that way, and what is his point? So his point is very clear, invited, rejected. You should have known better, and you show up here in my presence, and you're not prepared, you're not going to stay. Yeah, Lisa?
So he's talking to Jews.
Mm-hmm.
He's telling them the Gentiles are coming.
Yeah.
And then he warns them that he's gonna toss out a Gentile because he didn't respect.
Doesn't say he's a Gentile.
Okay, so they invited somebody new, and that person, so I get it from the Gentile's perspective, like if it was a Gentile hearing it,
Mhm.
I would hear, you need to be careful to respect the bridegroom,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
But it's a Jew that's hearing it, so why is he warning the Jews that the new people coming in need to be respectful? It just seems like I don't understand the last little turn of this parable, like, why would he tell that to the Gentiles? Why is he telling that to the Jews? The Jews would know to wear the right clothes, right?
Yeah, they did know, but that's the point. They did know, and they didn't. They didn't do it.
Oh,
That's the point.
well, the whole point of the parable was, in comes the Gentiles. The Gentiles are the newbies. Is that not the point of the parable?
That's not the point.
The point of the parable is many are called and few are chosen.
Yeah, the point is that you were invited. The Jews.
But the parable isn't trying to say the Jews were invited first and they rejected the Christ and so God opened
No,
the doors wider?
no, it's saying the Jews didn't accept the invitation. Now, we could take this a lot further, and we can go back into Romans, right? In fact, we can spend a lot of time about the prediction of the Gentiles coming in, and et cetera, and the engrafting in of the Gentiles in Romans 11. We could, but that's not the point here. Now, the fact that all are called would be perhaps insulting to the Jews, because what you think they're equal with us, okay? And that would have been something that was fine with Jesus if they took it that way, because he wants them, I'll make you jealous by a people, and the rest of it I'd mess up. But and if they got jealous because he's talking about these other people coming in, that would be fine. But the point is that the Jews had every opportunity, every privilege that they, the Jew first and also to the Greek, that they of all people had everything. And Jesus points that out so clearly to them. I'm standing right here, and you can't see me because you don't believe Moses, and therefore you don't believe me. Okay? They're not ready. They should have been. Kevin?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, there are other parables that are specifically about the whole Gentile being brought in, but it doesn't seem like the context to me in Matthew that this particular parable is specifically
Not the point, yeah.
referring to Gentiles.
Right.
And I think, in the broader scope, that the gospel is it's not just for the elite Jews.
Right.
And Jesus isn't just bringing the gospel to Gentiles, but he's bringing it to the weak and the poor and the sinful and the broken people. And I think that's probably more along the lines of what he's referring to is he invited the best of the best, and they rejected the word, and now he went out to everybody. But everybody else still has to have the right preparation and
Right. And the Gentile part, that's just an interpretation of this parable. That is one interpretation that he's talking about Gentiles. But maybe it could also be that these are all Jews, and he's invited, so we've got the leadership, right, and the Sanhedrin and the scribes and the Pharisees and all this that were invited, refused, so I'm going to invite everybody, But again, it's really easy to get too literal and detailed instead of just going, the kingdom of heaven can be compared to this. Okay, yeah, Chris.
Well, that's it. The kingdom of heaven can be compared to, right? The kingdom of heaven is expansive. Many are called and few are chosen.
Yeah.
That we know. Whether
Yeah.
contextually, because we're on the other side of the cross and have some context, but they still should have known that the Gentiles were going to be part of it, right? But that whether they did or not, whether they realized that or not in this, that's not the point of the parable.
Yeah.
The point of the parable is that you Pharisees think you're the elite, think of all of these bad people out there, oh boy, how's Jesus eating with those people?
Yeah.
Why is he, those
That's
were
right.
Jews.
Yeah.
Those were Jews, right?
That's right.
Guess what? He's calling everybody. He's calling the good and the bad, because you guys, you elite rejected it.
Yeah.
He's calling the good and the bad. If you want to expand to the Gentiles, that's fine. He has plenty of interactions with Gentiles along the way. He's saving them. He's you know, he's doing miracles for them, whatever. But at the end of the day, there's this big call, and that's the point of the kingdom of heaven.
Right.
It's this huge call. Unfortunately, only a few are gonna heed that call. And
Yeah.
the few that are gonna heed that call are the ones that are gonna be prepared to heed
Yeah.
that call as well. Because the one who wasn't
Yeah.
didn't get to partake.
Yeah, yeah. And so, yeah, and it's important to remember how the elite, as we'll call them, look down on the rest of the people, you know, the poor and the et cetera. They were better. But they did want them to follow them. They wanted to rule over them. They wanted to be looked up to by them, okay?
Just look back in chapter 21, the last verse. What's the last verse say in chapter 21?
Let's look.
Yeah.
Let's look. Ah, yeah. When they sought to seize him, they feared the people because they considered him to be a prophet. That one?
They were envious.
Yeah.
They wanted to be the prophet,
Yeah,
right? And so then he comes in with this parable,
yeah,
right? There's no, even though Jesus again spoke, it doesn't sound like there's a separation, like time is separated here. I don't think it has. I think this
Right.
is continuous. And so he knows they want to take him.
yeah,
They know they're envious of him.
Yeah.
They're jealous of him because he's got the people's ear and he's a prophet.
yeah. Yeah, and you know, and another thing that lends itself to this being all Jewish people is that when you know that you know better, and you're caught dead to rights, what are you going to say? You know, yeah, you know, what are you going to say? Yeah, Robert.
I just want to make the point that this is kind of the crescendo, if you will, because again, the parable of the landowner is really directed to the leaders of the Jews.
Mm-hmm.
Then he goes in and he talks about the stone that the builders rejected.
Yep.
Again, they rejected, as you brought out in John, and then he goes into this parable of the wedding feast. So this is kind of summation of what he has said previously.
Yeah, and he's going to keep going. He's going to keep doing parables that are going to be, you know, preparation type things, you know.
Hasn't let up on the Jewish leaders at all.
No, he doesn't. No. I mean, then, you know, chapter 23, he really lets loose on them, you know. We had some of that in our sermon on Sunday. And so anyway, yeah, so he was speechless. The king said to the servants, bind him hand and foot and throw him out into the outer darkness. In that place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. For many are called, but few are chosen. Many are called, but few. Does that ever cause you alarm to consider that? Many are called, but few are chosen. Okay. So what would you have to do? Maybe this will make you feel better in case you have any problem with that. What would you have to do not to be of the chosen? Same thing these Jews are doing. Yeah, reject. You'd have to reject, renounce the invitation. Okay, and so the danger for people amongst others, but the danger is that we're like those Hebrews, and we're not diligent to, like Paul said, do not be foolish, but understand what the will of the Lord is. Okay, and so we need to be diligent with that and understand what he wants of us, and then exercise the faith to carry that out to the best of our ability, or reject him. Okay, so do you think love's going to cover a multitude of sins on the judgment day? Do you think that there are going to be things that we're going to be really imperfect when we breathe our last breath, but that's going to be covered? What do you think? Yeah. So remember, when you submitted to baptism, Paul said that as many of us who have been baptized into Christ have clothed ourselves with Christ. Okay? So I don't quite adhere to the God doesn't see the sin, he only sees Jesus philosophy. But in essence, if I'm clothed with Christ, when I sin, then I know exactly what to do. Tell God I sinned. I understand this was wrong. I confess that it was wrong. And he says, this 1 John 1, paraphrasing, you confess it and you're forgiven. Okay. So as long as we're honest and doing our best to do his will, we'd have to reject him and say, in whatever thing, like Paul says, if I regard sin in my heart, the Lord will not hear. So I have to examine if there's things in my heart that I know are not right, and I'm keeping them anyway. Then you're rejecting the invitation. Okay, so don't be alarmed at that. Okay, it's sober and it's serious, but don't look at that and say, well, I don't know if I'm going to heaven or not. Okay.
Well, in context here, right, this is, you're rejecting the offer.
That's right.
That's as far as we need to go with it from a parable standpoint.
Right.
Is they rejected the offer to partake in what's to be compared to the kingdom of heaven.
Yeah, that's it. See? And they're like a person that comes to a wedding without the wedding clothes, without being prepared. Okay? The kingdom of heaven is like that. Okay? So if you come unprepared, then he throws you out into the outer darkness, weeping and gnashing of teeth. Okay? Many called, few are chosen. All right. Lots of good lessons in there. All right, so in Matthew 25, we have the parable of the 10 virgins. The kingdom of heaven will be comparable to 10 virgins who took their lamps and went out to meet the bridegroom. Okay? And for 5 of them were foolish, and 5 were prudent. For when the foolish took their lamps, they took no oil with them, but the prudent took oil in flask along with their lamps. Now while the bridegroom was delaying, they all got drowsy and began to sleep. But at midnight there was a shout, "Behold the bridegroom, come out to meet him." Then all those virgins arose and trimmed their lamps. The foolish said to the prudent, "Give us some of your oil, for our lamps are going out." But the prudent answered, "No, there will not be enough for us and you too. Go instead to the dealers and buy some for yourselves." And while they were going away to make the purchase, the bridegroom came, and those who were ready went in with him to the wedding feast, and the door was shut. Later the other virgins also came, saying, "Lord, Lord, open up for us." But he answered, "Truly I say to you, I do not know you. Be on the alert then, for you do not know the day nor the hour." Okay? So this kind of takes me back to the vineyard again, the laborers in the vineyard, and also the parable we just looked at, because many will be ready, and some will not be ready. You can't plan the end, right? Can't plan it. You just know it's coming. And so, are we ready or are we not ready? Okay, so why does Jesus bother to, well, let me put it this way. Why does the Father have Jesus speaking these parables to the Jews who are not accepting the invitation? Why is he continuing to talk to them like this? What's the point in continuing? That's right. Yeah, Ezekiel 18, I take no pleasure in the death of the wicked. He doesn't want them to be lost. He wants them to be saved. I mean, who did he send Jesus to? Go to the lost sheep. I have come to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. He sent out his disciples 2 by 2. Go to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. That was the priority at that time. Go and talk to them first. See, give them the opportunity. Put the scriptures together. Preach that Old Testament. Put it back together. Let them show them the Christ. See, give them that opportunity. So it's because he wants them to be saved. That's why. See, and he continued and continued. So the custom of the land back then is that the groom would go to the house of the father-in-law, and he'd bring the bride back to his house for the wedding feast. And when those who escorted him in see him, they would come out, and also the groom comes, and they would see him. They'd all get up, and they'd go in, and they would have the wedding feast. So they're waiting. The virgins are waiting, and they fell asleep. I don't think that's making a big point about the fact that they fell asleep while they were waiting, right? Just kind of a side thing, unless we want to find something in there. But they didn't have enough oil in their lamps to go and meet the bridegroom. They weren't prepared. So one of the points of this lesson, of course, would be always be prepared. I mean, that's pretty obvious, right? So what do we have to do to be prepared? Just, we know what the Lord wants us to do, and we do that, faithfully serve him, and we'll either leave this world or he'll come back, and we won't have to shrink away from him in shame at his coming, okay? Because we will have been waiting for him, okay? So there's waiting, like waiting in a line at the grocery store, and then there's waiting like in the tradition of the apostle to the Corinthians, waiting for the revelation of Jesus Christ. So you have servants that are, I can't remember where this parable is right now off my top of my head, but like these servants, the master goes away on a journey, and some of them get drunk, and they're beating each other up and all that, but others are keeping things in order. And he says, blessed are those servants that he finds so waiting when he comes. So waiting entails attending to the master's business while he's gone, okay? And so if we're attending to his business while he's away, when he comes, he will invite us to sit and recline with him at the table, and it's going to be a wonderful, wonderful wedding feast. And so that's the whole thing, is just be prepared. Okay? Yeah, Chris?
Well, I mean, he's just so in chapter 24, verse 36 says, now concerning the day and the hour, no one knows, not even angels in heaven, or the Son, but the Father only. So that sets the tone, right? For what we're talking about.
Yeah.
And then he talks about the people, hey, you leadership that I have over you, that's what's going to happen to you.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So and that's when he says that he's going to cut them into pieces, and they'll be weeping and gnashing of teeth. So he said that's where you guys are now. For the rest of you, and then the kingdom of heaven, not what it can be compared to, but mine says will be like.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the not yet taking place.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's what we're describing. You're in the already, and the not yet hasn't taken place, because he set the tone back in verse 36 that's what he's talking about.
Mm-hmm.
That he's talking about something beyond.
Mm-hmm.
Beyond. And so I think it's important to take a look at that. Contextually, if you don't get that, then you're like, okay, well, wait a minute. If the kingdom hasn't come yet, but it's going to come, and how are the 10 virgins really? I mean, is it the virgins in becoming Christians? But if you remember verse 36,
Yeah.
then you say, okay, this is about an end. This is an end time
Mm-hmm.
parable
Yeah.
for them.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, very good, very good.
There,
Yes.
it kind of takes me back actually to your sermon on Sunday.
Uh-huh.
About the pure in heart.
Uh-huh.
We will see God, right?
Yep.
So that's also
Yeah. Well, yeah. And you know, you think about those virgins, the ones who were prepared. Why were they prepared? Well, you know, it calls them prudent, right? And prudence is, at least my definition, is deep introspection before acting. So as they were preparing for this wedding feast, they thought deeply about what it's going to entail. And so you can see them saying, okay, you know, whatever, but we need to make sure that we're ready when he comes. Okay? When he arrives there, we need to be ready. They planned for that. They were prudent. They gave it thought. So they were prepared. See? But the others were more kind of lackadaisical about it and didn't take the time or make the effort to really think about what they were about to do and what was going to be necessary in order for them to be ready. Okay? And then there he is. Okay? And now they want to get ready. See? Or in fact, before he came, they run out, so we don't have it, so we're gonna go get ready now. Ever heard people say that? Well, I'll take care of that. I'll deal with that later. Okay, but that's a horrible thing to be in that situation, and then we're gonna talk about the rich fool, so he thinks he's got it made and. Got riches, things stored up for many years to come, like he knows he has many years. And then he goes to sleep that night and it's like, you're done. That language there always impresses me. This night your soul is required of you. What are you going to say? Nothing you can do about it. See? So this idea of preparation is really big, Yeah, Scott?
So you kind of talked about the going to sleep thing, not really maybe having much significance, but when I was reading it, I kind of interpreted it that they were all prepared if the bridegroom showed up on time. But the fact that there was a delay,
Oh, yeah.
that made a difference. And instead of going back and taking care of the issue at that moment, they went to sleep. So that was part of the poor choice right there, was that they had time to actually fix it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay. I like that. Yeah. Yeah. So they had an opportunity, they just didn't take it. Right? Yeah. So isn't that what we were just talking about with in Matthew 22, right? They had an opportunity, they didn't take advantage of it. Okay. So when you look at this in a big picture kind of way, here we have God, not only with regard to the Jews of Jesus' day, as we're seeing him deal with them here, but with regard to all of us, God doing all of this, giving us all of this in his genius to tell us, hey, everybody, be ready. Okay? Be ready. The world out there is, as John said, under the power of the evil one. And in John 8, Jesus talks about the devil being a liar, and he's the father of lies. And the reason the Jews didn't believe him because they're believing his lies. And so people in general, and I'm being very general, I'm very humble when I say this because there's all kinds of people going through all kinds of things, and I am not big, my shoulders are not big enough to talk about God's judgment of all. I just can't do that. It's just too big for me, But speaking in general, the world, as John said, is under his power, listening to his lies and not able to hear what God is saying. Okay. And they won't be prepared. But judgment, that's God's thing. I did that early in my Christian life, and I just about quit going to church altogether. Okay, because I was looking at the world and deciding, well, nobody cares about this. Look at this is happening and that's happening. These people are doing this and these people are doing that. Nobody cares, and I got that thinking just kind of drug me down, and I was ready to just throw the whole thing away, And that's when, I've told you that story of, that preacher coming over and said, Daryl, You can't carry the whole world on your shoulders. They're not big enough. But anyway, but that's the problem. It was a problem with the Jews. It's the problem with the world, is that Satan lies. People believe his lies. Their hearts are divided all kinds of different ways. And he's going to come. People are passing away just like this. I mean, just, and sometimes it happens close to us and our close friends, and sometimes it's out there, but it's happening all the time. And the Lord is just saying, be prepared, and he'll judge how he's going to judge people, okay? But we have his word, we have his instruction, and just, be ready, okay? Let's see, anything else in my notes here I want to say. Okay. All right. So anything else on anything else on the 10 virgins? I'm sure there's lots that could be talked about here. But at the end of it, he says, when they came in verse 11 and said, Lord, Lord, open up to us, he answered it, truly I say to you, I do not know you. I don't recognize you. One of the connotations of this word, as per Matthew 7, when he said, I never knew you, okay, there's a connotation of I never approved of you. You never met my approval. You who practice lawlessness, okay? So when there's that practicing of lawlessness context, then it was he never approved of you, okay? He never accepted your life, what you were offering to him. He never accepted it, okay? And here, I don't know you, okay? I mean, that's pretty. What are you going to say to that? Yeah, but I mean, I tell you, I don't want to have to think that I need somehow to convince the Lord. And I'm not. I mean, apparently, we're not. If we're not pure in heart, we're not going to see him anyway. Okay. But somehow having to say to a voice or something that, yeah, but I don't want to have to try to explain. Matthew 7 teaches me that if you got to try to talk your way in, you're in bad shape. So, and we don't have to. We have opportunity. Just feel blessed that we are alive, and you, as an individual person, have an opportunity to serve God and be with Him. So, and so, okay. Be on the alert then, for you do not know the day or the hour. Okay, all right. The next one we're going to look at, and we get a little bit of a start on, like we did with this last week with the next one, is the parable of the talents. Okay, in Matthew 25:14 through 30. Now, I'm up here talking about these parables, and I think we're probably pretty familiar with them, aren't we? Most of us pretty familiar with what these parables are talking about. And so we're going to take a look when we go through this one talk about the point of it and what the Lord was getting across. We only have like 2 minutes, so I'm not going to try to do anything with this one tonight. So in 2 minutes. So if there's nothing else, class dismissed.